Thanks for coming, everybody. It's a decent show up. I was hoping for a little more, but that's okay, because we still got some interesting questions that I hope are thought-provoking enough to get you riled up. That's my goal here. So let's set up some parameters. Usually, during my presentations, I give a list of things to discuss or just look over, and some parameters so that we don't deviate too far outside of the goal. So let's take a look here. What is climate? And it's weather conditions that prevail. It's a meteorological term for 10 years of observed weather in the same region. Then we've got climate change, which is just a generic term for how it's been progressing, the climate itself. In the last 20th century, we've seen quite a lot of changes. So let's take a look at how the world has changed in the past few years. Generally, temperatures have increased by 1 to 1.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is a little bit skewed, and we'll cover that a little bit later. We've also seen bleaching of coral reefs and the acidification of oceans, which has played a big role in the demise of the bleaching, or the reefs. So we've also seen acidification of ground and rainwater, which plays a large role in plant development. And finally, we've seen massive changes in the plant hardiness zones, which I have a map right here. Over the past few years, where plants have been able to grow and where species have been able to live has progressed generally in that direction, north, as the temperatures in those regions continue to climb on average, making it easier for insects to survive over the cold periods and spread disease as well. So here's the first question, and this one should be pretty easy. Is climate change attributed largely to the increase of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by fossil fuels? So basically, did man cause this problem we have now? Who would say that it is most definitely a man-caused or man-made problem? One. Everybody? It's still definitely man-made. Okay. So there are several. It would be thermal vents or volcanic activity. We could even say livestock could play a role in it, because methane is a contributing factor to greenhouse gases.
What about the position of the Earth as it moves through?
No.
Well, that was easily shut down.
Trust me, no.
No.
Okay,
So what's your specific question? Because I can answer that.
Does that count as an attribute? Is it
When we're closer to the sun,
there's thousands of year cycles that the Earth goes through that possibly cause ice ages and temperature changes?
So here is what the data says. I got a slide just for that in case somebody asked a question. We could take a look at these ice core samples over the past 420,000 years. And these are the average temperature differences and the amount of carbon dioxide in parts per million as time has gone on. And there is a direct correlation between the two. If there were any other significant contributing factors, like the position of the Earth compared to the sun, then it would be represented on this chart as well, in the sense that you would see some sort of change based off of a pattern. But that seems to be primarily the causation. So here's question 2. How can you, as individuals, help stop carbon dioxide pollution? Anybody?
Stop breathing.
Stop breathing. That's one. You do produce 2 pounds of carbon dioxide per day, and it is a primary causation. Anything else?
Energy.
Conserve energy. And how would you recommend doing that?
Shut your lights off in the 90s.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to throw this one out there. The energy that is going into your house is still going to be used even if you're not using it in many circumstances. It's reduced when you turn it off, but just having outlets causes an additional amount of energy to be wasted just by having the current flowing through it. So even if you're not using the energy, it's still getting used somehow. What's up?
Drive less.
Drive less.
Use like solar energy.
Mm-hmm. So how economic is it? His idea is pretty economic and relatively easy to achieve, But for you, how expensive do you think buying solar panels would be, or how adverse it would be to no longer be able to use a vehicle? It'd be pretty hard, right? We all live in the modern era. It's a first world country. Most people have vehicles or are required to use them in some sense. So it's relatively difficult to, hold on, here we go. So the answer is not much. It's very difficult for the average person to actually make a difference in the amount of carbon dioxide that we're producing. Not to mention, commercial and residential, which includes most vehicles, there's some in the transportation sector, but that is mostly SUVs, trucks, large tankers for overseas travel, and aircraft that are the primary factors for this massive number in transportation. But electricity and industrial are the largest, other than that. And this is mostly because, as an industry, you're going to need to burn, or you're going to need a ton of energy to do certain things. As we speak, people are breaking down aluminum from its ore by heating it up to 326, I believe, million degrees Fahrenheit. And that requires a lot of energy, guys. That's not just coming out of nowhere. We have to burn fuels to do that. So let's see. Here's another question I just threw in there that I thought was an interesting solution in some regards to what we could do about carbon dioxide. Is there a way to store it? There have been propositions in order to sublimate the carbon dioxide into a solid or liquid form and put it somewhere. Or try to get it absorbed into minerals like the way we found it and burned it. So what do you guys think? Do you think that's a good idea? Planting trees is great. That's one way to do it, for sure.
The organisms that create limestone fix carbon.
Okay. So for that one, those processes take millions, if not billions of years to accomplish. We would have to stop producing the CO2 for this to make sense, because they'll do that anyways. Any other ideas for how to store carbon dioxide? What's up?
Not producing more humans, not having kids.
Yes, less people means less energy consumption. That is actually rather true, unless you've got a very enigmatic billionaire who likes the idea of burning things for his industry. In which case, like in the slide before, an individual isn't actually contributing much. When I say we, I mean as humanity, not as necessarily individuals. But what can humanity do to store the CO2 that we've made? I've got some answers if nobody else has any ideas.
Did they mention diesel?
No.
Biodiesel, I'm sorry.
Biodiesel?
Yeah.
Biodiesel is a temporary bandage on the big wound that carbon dioxide is creating. What essentially you're doing is you're reabsorbing the carbon dioxide that exists in the air, and you're putting it into your car and burning it again, which is pretty much just causing the problem. You're making it 10% less of an issue. But in the process, manufacturing, harvesting, watering, all the other things that go into making those, you've actually contributed more carbon dioxide than you did in the first place. So it's not a good idea. So Brad, what's up? And then we'll go to Bob.
Just like a brief blurb video about a material that's something like low density corrugated cardboard that is actually like a material that absorbs carbon dioxide from the air, and surface area is the big key thing to pay attention to that. So it's all like festooned and pulled apart like a Christmas tree, and that's kind of like how they would go about reclaiming.
Oh, okay. So I heard something. Did they call it a synthetic tree?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I heard something about that. And the primary issue that they had encountered is then what to do with the tree afterwards. The thing is you can't really do anything with it, because if you want to tear it apart from the form that it's currently in, you could try to use it for structural stuff like putting it into concrete or whatnot. But if you manipulate it too much, then you release the CO2 that you attempted to put in the first place, and exposure to sunlight gradually does a chemical reaction with it and allows for that carbon dioxide to escape. So thus far, that project has not succeeded. All right, Bob, what's up?
Coal scrubbers on power plants, are they effective?
Coal scrubbers are effective, but they have a life expectancy and are, in fact, rather expensive and costly in terms of electricity to create as well. Kind of like up in the International Space Station or other outer space-based projects like the Apollo ones, they had devices that they could use to remove carbon dioxide from the air because that's easier than pumping in new oxygen, since we breathe out 1/4 carbon dioxide compared to the intake of oxygen. So you still have 3/4 of the oxygen that you brought in the first place. So it is useful, but at the same time, you would have to force all of that air through, and then the problem, again, persists of making the product, and then where do you put it? In many instances, it would be worse than nuclear waste. You would have too much of it, way too much of it.
Get rid of CO2. I thought pulse scrubbers got rid of like NO2s and SO2s that cause acid rain and get rid of like impurities.
They work in a way to remove dioxides in general. There's more than one form, and especially the kind for spacebound flight. All right, so no more questions on that? All right, cool. So I'm just going to bring up some propositions that the US government had for ways to store carbon dioxide. The first one would be to pump it underground. And they're already doing this in the way that there's types of very dense bedrock that are deep within the earth based off of a geological study across the United States that with drills could be, you could pump that air or liquid carbon dioxide back into the ground. And it would stay there supposedly until somebody uncapped it. Now, any geological disturbance would ruin this. Earthquakes, a plane crash, an asteroid, who knows? Because you can't actually go down to that bedrock and check to see for yourself whether or not, the CO2 has escaped or is leaking at all. And an even crazier solution is to turn it into liquid form and let it sit at the bottom of the ocean. Is that nuts? Here's what it does. The liquid CO2 at the density that it's at sinks to the bottom of the ocean and essentially becomes a carbon dioxide lake. And unless a wave comes by or something, or another force is in play, that lake will stay there. Now, that could become a catastrophe in less than 1,000 years, and it is certainly a temporary fix. Once again, not to mention, converting all that carbon dioxide into a solid requires a lot of energy, and it doesn't seem worth it either. So let's move on to the next thing. So I talked a lot about carbon dioxide, but humans in general, this is about the climate, as in like our entire planet in many regards. Humans have had a big impact on the planet overall. We've made changes to pretty much everything. We've even, as geologists, I'm not a geologist, but geologists have had to come up with a new term for how much we've altered the planet. It's called the Anthropocene.
Anthropocene.
Yeah, Anthropocene, which is this new epoch that we've entered because of the massive changes we've made to the surface of our planet. The biggest change is the deforestation. The amount of trees that currently exist on approximation is 3 trillion. 200 years ago, it was 15 times more than that. We've wiped out more than, what? What's 3 times 15, Lawrence? 45. I'm real bad at basic math. All right, we've wiped out 45 trillion trees, guys. That's a lot of trees. So the next one is the building of roads.
42 trillion. That's what we cut down. There were 45 million.
This laser pointer lines. All right. So as we built roads and converted the natural limestone into concrete, we've made a huge contribution to the state of the world. Essentially, if we were all to go extinct right now, it would be more than recognizable that humans made their mark on the planet from a geological sense for the next 100 million years minimum. That's what I believe the reasoning behind this new change in terminology. So let's go on to some more questions. How is changing climate affecting us now? as people, what do you think is the biggest adversity to the current change of climate? We may not be feeling it all that much here in Wisconsin, but in the United States, across the world, what are these changes that you think are happening? So we've got kind of physical and mental effects is like the first one.
More noticeable ones would be like rise of sea levels. That's pretty noticeable.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how much it's risen?
No idea.
Only about half an inch. It's very small. Not much water has melted from the Great Antarctic Sheet, and the Greenland Sheet is considerably thinner. Even if it were to entirely melt, it would not be nearly as dramatic as if the Antarctic Sheet were to have submerged. What's up?
What about anything along the lines of like natural anomalies, so such as droughts, things like that?
Yes, droughts are the big one that I would say people are experiencing right now.
Causing polar vortexes, for example, too.
Vortexes?
Polar vortexes.
Polar vortex? Oh, you mean where we've got strong, yeah, okay. So in general, you're not just getting heating, and that's why we call it climate change, right? We're not just dealing with a general increase in temperature, although that is the trend. People experience not only that, but you'll get stronger extremities in all weather systems with the change in heat. Essentially, if we were to heat it up enough, it would affect the ability of air currents and jet stream-based weather systems so much so that we would see extreme shifts in cold and heat. So let's see, how does this affect physical and mental health of humans and wildlife? That's the first sub-question.
The acidity of the oceans, like taking its toll on the coral, like wrecks like the basic layer of the ecosystem, and who knows what the ramifications of that going to be. So, like certainly fishing industries and the entire marine life is in jeopardy to some extent.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's up?
Did we move beyond asking about your claims about ocean acidification? Because we're already
No, this is totally on point. And if you have anything that I've covered before and you feel like it needs to be recovered,
or maybe we're going to get that on the end.
I won't be talking much more about ocean acidification. It was just a topic. What do you have to say about it?
It's extremely challenging for someone who knows nothing about climate science or is not a scientist to figure out who's saying, like for example, you put out there that temperatures have been increasing. There are countless articles that say that has to do with tampering of weather stations, and that there are 3 main organizations that have essentially changed the trend in the actual temperatures that were reported to say that they have been increasing. And ocean acidification, and I just looked up some generic articles also, because there's apparently one person claiming that oceans are acidifying, and that everyone else just hopped on that bandwagon because it sounded good to agree with the global warming trend. There's something else that's interesting that's
for that particular argument, there is geological proof that an amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere increase from volcanic activity particularly shows that when you have any sedimentary buildup along coastlines and other regions where you get a lot of silt, you can see that the water content of that time through testing was a higher acidity. So those type of chemicals definitely contribute to acidification of water.
So it has nothing to do with carbon dioxide?
No, it has particularly to do with carbon dioxide.
Because of carbonic acid, right?
That's correct.
So what is the argument to the fact that there's an inverse relationship between temperatures on Earth and acidification of oceans? You can't have increasing temperatures and greater acidification.
You absolutely can.
As the temperature of the water increases. Again, I'm not.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not arguing one point or another. This is kind of a devil's advocate one.
Sure.
So as the temperature of the water increases, the CO2 amount in the water has to decrease.
No.
And the simple the argument that they used was if you just leave your bottle of Coke on the table,
Yes.
And
The
warms up.
amount that it can actually hold does go down. I definitely agree.
That doesn't increase the mass.
But the fact of the matter is that the rise in temperature is very small right now. It's 1 to 1.7 degrees on average. And when we're discussing climate, we're not talking about a day-to-day thing. We're talking about an overall trend. And when we look at the overall trend, it might be higher, but that also means it might be lower. It's the systems that we have in place right now for the moving of currents and airflow are pretty much the same. They haven't quite been unaffected, or they haven't been unaffected, but they haven't been drastically affected by the increase in temperature. And because of this, we can still state that it's about the same state that it was in, the ocean is. And therefore, it can absorb this amount of carbon dioxide. But that may change. You've got a good point. Let's say the ocean gets stupidly hot for no apparent reason, like 75 degrees all the time or higher, whatever. Because we're talking about deep sea ocean as well, which is the biggest problem. The brine can hold on to CO2 even better and longer if the temperature drops in certain areas where the CO2 is high and it's acidified. It gets to become brine. That brine sinks down to the bottom of the ocean, and it stays there. And it stays acidic, and it spreads throughout the currents on the bottom of the ocean. So, you get what I'm saying? Okay,
But
cool.
I wanted to make sure you're not just stating one source.
No, there's a lot of reasons behind this. It's not just one thing.
But if you look at like your chemistry reaction, right? You have CO2 on one side plus water, and then carbonic acid on the other side, right? That's since CO2 and water are so stable, the balance is far over here in less acid. But the more you increase your CO2, you drive the reaction this way, and that's what's responsible for the acidification.
And what he's saying, though, Brian, to be fair, is that if you heat up water, it has a much lower ability to absorb air. It ejects whatever it has absorbed. It's not holding on to the carbon. But to be fair, that's under much stronger circumstances than 1 degree. We're talking 10 degrees,
Yeah, but
20
I
degrees.
don't care about temperature. But when you change the pH of the oceans, you can wreck the aquatic environment.
Well, that's already happening. We're not
Right.
we're not disagreeing with that.
And real quick, and to the point about the temperature, so did you read anything about the fact that every major source that reports the fact that temperatures have been increasing are using the adjusted figures, which apparently have adjusted the ground temperatures that were taken over the past 50 years?
No, I haven't heard that at all.
So, yeah, that would be. Apparently, there's
The majority of my sources that I'm using are U.S. or AMS or American Meteorological Services, and I've been using their actual website because I'm taking a meteorological course right now for school.
Yeah,
So
it's apparently the Global Historical Climate Network. The
I've never heard of that.
For Space Studies and the National Climate Data Center have all used adjusted
well,
temperature.
the American Meteorological Society has not, as far as I'm aware, or I would have to look into that, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. So let's move on to the next thing. How about, I said diseases and mental health, but do people know that with higher temperatures and more pollution in general, diseases spread easier amongst us? As our immune systems are lowered and compromised, it's far more likely that we will suffer a great loss of lives due to a plague because of the pollution we've done to the planet. That's just a fact. Also, our ability to work, well, we can't work if we're dead. So that's one.
You don't know that.
All right, Zombie Lawrence, I'll keep that in mind. And our food supply is drastically affected as well, as Joe brought up earlier, with severe droughts and other issues on that line. Right now, we're suffering from these problems, and it's only going to get worse. So what has the government been trying to do to help? What do you think the government should do to help? Obviously, more solar panels, right, guys?
Raw research.
Research.
Solar panels not going to get it done either.
Okay. Somebody had their hand up. Was it Sarah? Sarah had her hand up. Totally. No.
It's alternative energy subsidies.
Alternative
Just like
energy.
doing
prices for gas.
Okay, okay. So from an economic perspective, it's known that if you increase the price of it, that doesn't actually change the requirement that people have. There's been laws that have tried to do that, like, you know, hey, Mexico City was like, man, there are just too many cars out on the road right now. So we're going to have it so that this group of cars with these license plate endings can only drive on certain days, and this other group can only drive on the other certain days. And well, people just bought 2 cars. That didn't help. That added twice as many cars. That was not an effective measure. The problem is the requirement for the energy in general and the ease of access, regardless of price. If they increase the price, that just means that the companies making it will also increase the price. So now you've got this new price floor, I believe it's called, and then the company will add more so that they can make the money that they're getting charged back. So you're only actually increasing the price by increasing the price at all. The government has tried now. I believe here's the newest statistics that I could find easily. So right now we've got in 2006 we've got a really small amount of energy being produced right there out of the total amount of energy. And I believe this is in a measure of watts, some measure of watts, I don't recall. But that's approximately 10%, and then that's approximately 10% as well. Nuclear actually went down in 2014 as some of the 1970s reactors were decommissioned and due to safety hazards or potential safety hazards and a lack of reliable fuel for the types of reactors that they're using. Now, I've heard the argument for thorium reactors, but I'm not as well researched on that as well. They also produce radioactive waste, so regardless, you're getting something you don't want to get some energy for now. Oil actually went up in the amount of energy it produces. In fact, overall, the general trend is an increase in energy creation because the United States every year we build new things, new infrastructure, and we need more energy. But there is more in hydro and renewable. It's a good trend if you think about it slightly optimistically, but there needs to be significantly more, like this whole sector here just removed. That would be nice. Coal is the greatest pollutant out of all of those because not only in the manufacturing process does it create carbon dioxide, well, once you use it, but also you have to tear up the earth, you have to process the coal. Oil does get processed, but most of the things that come out of oil can be used in other sources, like plastics or the natural gas as well. So oil, in many regards, is far more reusable than coal is, and much less devastating to the environment. So, what will happen if we don't make a drastic change in our actions? And I mean drastic. I'm not talking cute things like putting up more solar panels. Technology will certainly help. That I could consider an investment in technology to be drastic. So what kind of drastic changes would you guys propose to the environment? What do you think we could do to fix it?
So right now, 80% of oil is used for transportation, and we need to reduce that.
I'm gonna discuss what happens if we don't make drastic changes in a second, but I just want to see what people think.
What happens if we don't?
Well, what were you saying? Oil?
So invest more in electric vehicle technology.
So there's a fundamental issue with that. The electric vehicle requires electricity. Where do you get the electricity? Probably coal or oil being burnt somewhere else anyways.
Oil is usually not used for electricity, to generate electricity. It's mainly for transportation.
I agree. But if we go back to this, and I eliminate that entire sector, we now need to fill it with something else. What would we be readily available, and the cheapest and easiest way, as the capitalist way is, the cheapest and easiest way to replace this sector that you've now removed? Coal or natural gas. It's not easy to make these, we can tell you that. Those require capital. Those require the panels or the fans or the turbines to exist and an area for them to be harvested in. It requires research to understand that this area is viable for wind power or solar power. And it requires time and energy to create, move, manufacture, etc. And in that process, you've actually created more CO2 again. So, not the greatest solution, but a good idea. I do agree, so at least in the long run, electric vehicles are far more sustainable than oil-based vehicles. And it will need to be done at some point. But right now we can't do that because there's no next step. Where do we go from there? How do we power these vehicles? Anybody else? I don't mean to shut you down. Mr. Shea, what's up?
Self-driving automobile?
So like a bicycle.
No, like Google does.
Oh, yes, automated driving.
Automated
Yeah.
driving.
Artificial intelligently driven.
Does that mean that the transportation system could be more efficient and use less energy?
Yes, actually. I don't mean to do any self-promotion here, but if you watched my episode, which you should have on Sci-5, I talked about this in the fact that Harvard has attempted to come up with a new way to drive vehicles without using stoplights or any on-ramps or off-ramps or anything like that, where it's just an automated system, and it uses a kind of like a ticker to wait in line for your service at a restaurant or something, but extraordinarily fast, to the point where a vehicle shouldn't need to make any stops at all at speeds under 60 miles per hour. So pretty impressive. And likely, yes, the increase, we don't know the exact numbers of efficiency increase, or at least I don't. There might be a study out there on how much that would help.
Back a while back, I remember reading a study on avert, which is the Bay Area Rapid Transit.
Mm-hmm.
And what they found initially, or over a period of time, 5 years or so, is that the number of trips, which is, it's a more efficient system. People got off, didn't drive as many cars, but actually what they found was that people took more trips.
Yeah.
So it was level, it was flat.
It's true.
And so
If we start considering our cars like mobile rooms because we don't have to pay attention to them anymore, maybe we'll spend all of our time in our cars. That's a good point. The statistic, it would be hard to evaluate with that in mind. What's up?
Shopping at home.
Shopping at home?
Yeah. You can online shop, have everything shipped to your house. You don't have to go to the fucking store 3 times a week and burn up a year's worth of gas that you could otherwise just have.
And you're saying that this is to drastically help?
It's more efficient.
Change?
If everybody did it, yeah.
I don't agree entirely.
It wouldn't be bad if you just have 4 cars that would replace it. So
Yeah.
instead of having personal cars do it, you would have brand name vehicles go out.
Yeah, but they're going place to place to place to place rather than to the store and back.
More efficient.
Yeah, it's a lot more
logistically
But-
creative.
Oh, yes, of course. He's saying that if the vehicle was programmed to be as efficiently as possible, maybe an artificial intelligence could come up with an algorithm that would say, hey, here's your shipping route. This is guaranteed to save 20-something%. Yes.
UPS, that's going to drop boxes off.
Right.
More efficiently than single cars to the store and back to their.
Definitely. Carpooling. Teleportation. That is drastic. We don't have that yet, buddy. Not for people. Maybe single photons across vast distances, but not people yet, guys.
If you do it enough, you can get an image somewhere.
Yeah. Enough. This isn't quantum physics today, for once. What's up?
What about much more heavily regulated EPA regulations for businesses and manufacturers?
How much? To the point where you run everyone who currently exists out of business?
I don't know.
Because the standards right now are very lenient. And they're lenient almost everywhere except California. Because California they rail everyone. Anyways, no, I'm not sure how you would implement that either without causing drastic economic problems. All right, Grace, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like you said, increasing the cost of fossil fuels isn't effective because of
inelastic demand. But kind of like he was saying, like the alternative is instead of just increasing the cost, actually limiting behavior, and saying like it doesn't just cost more, you can. And
You pass laws to say that you can't do certain things, and that would make a bigger impact.
as far as energy is concerned, like you said, like that impacts businesses. But right now, I think.
All right, so let me ask this question. All right, let's say that we do start passing more stringent laws on cars, right? Because they're a big contributor to carbon dioxide.
We'll say based on regulations. There's a
We'll say,
certain-
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So you've got cars that, and honestly, we should have more efficient cars, and I know that it's possible to create them, but the industry refuses, essentially, because they want you to buy a new car. That's pretty well known as far as I can see it. Let's say you change it so that they have to make a car that lasts much longer, and they have to make a car that is X amount more efficient, all right? Long run is good. Short run is bad, because you got guys who want to sell you a car every 5 years who now have to wait 40 years to sell you a car. They go out of business. You suddenly want a new car. There's no one to sell it to you. So there's economic ramifications any way you put it. As to the long-term results, I do believe it would be better, but not on the economy.
Well, right now, because of the amount that we subsidize fossil fuels, I think that we could switch that to actually subsidizing the changes that we want to see in the business.
Sure.
I
Businesses.
agree with that. For example, raising taxes on gas could be invested for subsidizing more renewable energies if you.
To pay for the
I mean, To be fair, there's much easier ways to get that money, and
I was going to say too.
there's so much easier ways to get that money. The U.S. government already has tons of money. They're just not using it. They're just not funding environmental protection or prevention to damage. Yes, what's up?
When it comes to, I would say, more naturally preferred transportation, it's almost to the point where, like you said, or well, you said as well, the idea of gas and oil is such an inelastic product that even if we raised the prices of gas, even if we raised the taxes, it's almost like saying, oh yeah, we're going to raise the price of cigarettes.
No, they want their cigarettes. They're going to pay for their stupid cigarettes.
That's actually good. Then the consumption stays high, and that levied tax will actually bring in more dollars.
Well, you're taking the money away from the people at that point. Whether or not that's good or bad is subjective.
The taxes do, I think, influence consumption to some degree, but it's relatively inelastic when you consider
Yeah.
it that much.
I would say that oil is a complete requirement for most people.
It is.
The
So, yeah.
example is actually a really good one. I mean, do you guys know? I'm sure maybe you know someone who smokes, but it's much less than it was 20 years ago. And that syntax has been rising like this.
There's a huge difference in Germany there.
But education-
Now, whether or not that is a causation directly or a correlation is hard to tell. There have been so many other factors, like the constant berate of DARE and other educational systems that I experienced as a child, that told me that cigarette smoking would kill me.
Or the literal laws.
Or the literal laws, yes, that make it you can't smoke inside anymore now.
Not even just that, but
You know.
that tobacco companies now cannot even advertise their products on the same airwaves.
Yes.
That they used to be able to.
But also now you're seeing an increase in marijuana.
That's right.
Yeah.
The compensation is the amount of marijuana growth. You've got cigarette smoke like this and marijuana growth smoke like that. You know.
We
It's,
started regulating it yet. Until it's legal, we can't regulate it.
no, but you can get a general sense of the amount that's being shipped in and out of the United States just based off of how many people you
I was
book.
talking about the places that it was legal.
Hmm?
That's what I was saying. The places where it's legal now.
Oh, for sure. They're a decent representation, although they haven't been around long enough to create a significant pile of data, or whatever you want to call it. All right, so anyways, Bob, one more here, yeah.
It has to do with your point about the money being available.
Yeah,
It's all about the political will.
correct.
In the 60s, the goal was the space race. And $30 billion were put in the Apollo program in that decade.
And I think with inflation,
That was
it's,
50 years ago.
right,
And
it's a crazy
turns
amount.
out that we were successful in our goal because the political will was there to do it. So the money is there. It Depends on how we want to allocate.
Depends on who is allocating that money or allowing that allocation of money. Lawrence and I had talked about this a couple times, where we were looking at the way the U.S. government currently spends our finances. And I think it's 2.5% or a little lower that goes towards education right now.
Yeah.
And how much towards science? Another 2%?
It's less than 2%.
It's less than 2% that goes to science. How much for military? 70? Huh? 57%? That's crazy,
The
guys.
thing is, if we cut our military budget in half, we would still have the biggest army in the world.
Not even a question. We'd also have the most surplus of military goods. In fact, there's another statistic about military goods that surprises most people. 74% of all military hardware is U.S. hardware or U.S. retired hardware. That's a lot. Guys, we give our excess crap to other people when we're done with it. We go, we don't need these tanks anymore. They suck compared to the tanks we have now. And we give it to someone else. So who's fighting all the wars with all the equipment? It's just our equipment fighting other people. It's horrible. Whatever. Moving on, Russia's the only other component in that one. So let's talk about world flooding, because I'm done with the other rant. So here's a map. I hope everybody can see
Awesome,
it.
we're good.
No.
Yeah, everybody's great. You can see here we are. We're okay, guys.
Yeah, we're good.
No worries here in Wisconsin. Except for the fact that, the Great Lakes consumed everything below us. Apparently. But up to 32% of the world's usable landmass will be put underwater if all the ice melts. And under new studies, it's very likely.
And also, I was actually going to say, part of it is irreversible. Like, there's,
Right.
like, at least, like, New York, that far inland, I'm not sure quite
Right.
how far. But it's like a definite, they will be flooded.
Yes, there's almost nothing we can do about that already.
What's the timeline?
I believe the map we're looking at now is an estimated 2,100. That is the current estimate there. But it could be as early as 2060, depending on trends in global consumption of fuel. That is assuming that we go back to an older rate, Jason. That's assuming we start burning as much as we wanted to this year, and we didn't cut back at all. We have. So. Oh, it certainly can. You put something on a frying pan, it'll burn. What's up?
20 minutes ago, a half inch wasn't a big deal to you, but now this is like a huge deal, and we're talking like.
Oh, it's not a big deal now. The implications that are occurring now have not destabilized the current systems that exist. It will. It's a huge deal.
That's a lot for a very short amount of time.
Oh yeah, yes, but it hasn't happened yet, so it doesn't seem like a big deal. What's up?
Your extrapolation is the half an inch that increased in the past 30 years is going to increase to like 3 feet.
This is an assumption that the Antarctic ice sheet melts. The reasoning that, and I don't know that it's a big assumption. It is, however, an assumption. The reasoning that it hasn't melted thus far is that it is an isolated system. It is at the bottom of the world. It gets the least amount of sunlight, and not much interacts with it. It gets some air in, but not much of the cold air leaves. Now, if the entire world's global systems were to be destabilized, you would no longer have that constant cool air coming in. You would basically be putting blow dryers to Antarctica all year round, assuming that we continue pumping out carbon dioxide. What's up?
Are you postulating that that Antarctica is shrinking right now?
Not nearly as bad. It is. It has shrunk. It has shrunk. We lost. I don't have a map of Antarctica right now.
You're talking about
But if we talk about the top of Antarctica that's facing up from South America up here, there's an ice sheet about 150 miles long by about 25 miles wide that did fall off a few years ago, and that contributed significantly to the rise that we have now. But what's up?
You're talking about the thing on the bottom.
Antarctica is south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Okay, like there's a circle here, right? That's Antarctica. At the top of at the south, yeah, South America's here, pointing at it. There's an ice sheet that fell off there. Use my map. Okay, it's over here, guys. There's a sheet that fell off over here. Does that help? My apologies. Okay, so there's a sheet that fell off there. And
When this is happening, right? It like each bit, it's progressing at a logarithmic scale. Because if for every bit of ice you lose, then you get more. You get less reflection of the sun. So
that's right.
More,
that's right.
So each bit.
It's a cascading problem. It looks real low tendency, but it'll just plummet like that.
So, yeah, Chris, I am absolutely with you on global warming. I agree. Every source I've read has said that Antarctica has increased ice mass, and it's the north. It's the North Pole that has decreased.
Yes, right now, yes. Now, there's reasons behind this, and I read something about it.
It's
But
winds and whatever.
actually, it's because of the melting that you're getting more ice. Fascinatingly enough.
Right, so now, to clear it up, as of right now, Antarctica is not shrinking. It's the Arctic that's shrinking.
Oh, the Arctic shrunk. It's already shitty.
Okay, correct. But
You were talking about Antarctica.
Yes, this is if Antarctica melts.
no, we're saying like
The current trends are that it did gain new ice.
Correct.
so as of right now, it's not officially.
So that's not as relevant.
It's not happening yet,
okay.
but it's not any less relevant.
Okay, so is this graph of if Antarctica melts or
Yes, this is if all glacial ice melts. We're including Mount Everest, etc., etc. This is worst case scenario. This is not guaranteed.
We're going full algorithms.
Well, sure, sure. But the thing is
This happening by 2010.
when we're no 20, 200, 2110, whatever.
No. He said within 10 years we're all going to be underwater.
Well, that's no. This is 100 years.
No. That was Al Gore.
Oh.
Oh, you can make it true.
Yeah. Well, I would say that his approximations were a little off and didn't include the fact that when you add heat to a system, it encourages it to freeze over. This is evident when you take hot coffee in extremely cold weather and throw it into the wind. What happens? It freezes instantly. Now, if you took a regular glass of water and threw it into the wind, would it freeze? No, it wouldn't. Because you increase the general temperature overall, you actually increase the amount of ice growth for this year and a couple future years. And heck, it may repeat the pattern a few more times. But the fact of the matter is the greatest amount of melting is yet to occur. It has not happened yet.
So why has the Arctic not gained ice and Antarctica has? And that I've always been confused with it.
I'm sorry, do you mean the other way around?
No.
No.
Antarctica's gained ice.
Oh, okay, yes.
The Arctic has not. It's been kind of static.
It's less isolated.
When you start calling it north and south to make it like
It has,
By currents?
yes,
it's like
yes.
Do that way.
Yes, it's okay. So the thing is connected land masses play a large role in the heat and the circulation of airflow. In this area, you've got connected land masses that allow it to interact with the rest of the world. Antarctica, on the other hand, has nothing. It is an isolated system and is sustainable for now. It could be sustainable for later. In fact, if you guys like to know some good news, the ozone should be back in that area and fully recovered by 2040. So this prediction, the one that I have here, even less likely to happen, but still totally feasible by some methods. Anywho, just imagine that every coastline city you thought of is now underwater. That's a pretty big problem. Where are we going to put all those people? How are we going to feed them? We have 35% less landmass to feed them with. You know, serious issues can be thought of with this. So here's the next one, megastorms. So I got a bunch of tornadoes. Yeah, a megastorm is something that hasn't happened on this planet yet. It does happen though, depending on the amount of heat in a system and how energetic you can ramp up a storm. Class and Category 5 hurricanes will be a joke. Imagine that you've got a storm that just doesn't end, like on Jupiter, that lasts thousands of years because it hasn't run out of the conductive energy and the circulation of water. And plus, it's got plenty more water to choose from, guys. It's got lots of water to pick up. Hurricanes could last forever. Storm systems could be all year round. Where would you want to live? It's either A, you are flooded, B, you don't get any water whatsoever, C, you lost wherever you lived before. Or you could go to Mars. See, now that's looking nice, right? Yeah, except for the total lack of livable atmosphere and maybe the shitty dirt they have there,
Better than nothing.
I mean, no, not really.
How much it costs to get there?
So, reasonably, we'd have to live underground in many places. You couldn't live on the surface, and where would you grow food? Where would you get your energy? How would any of this work? The systems that you proposed are not severe enough, and the change is not extreme enough to address these problems. Well, I'll send you a story about how islands will suffer from droughts the worst. Anyways, that one's brand new. Came out today. I didn't put it in here because of that. But yeah, so mega storms. They're a problem, and you should be scared of them. What's up, Florence? Oh, good one. All right. So what do we have to do? What do we have to do to stop this now, given the information that could proceed? Write to your congressman. Maybe become a congressman and then tell off all the other congressmen. What's up?
What are we supposed to do when only the U.S. and most of Europe do anything to regulate this stuff, whereas other countries don't?
China's been more cooperative, significantly.
Also, the U.S. doesn't do anything.
No, the U.S. is the most.
But like we're the ones that care about it.
Well, we don't care. We're not even part of Kyoto. We're a joke.
We pretend to care about it, but there's other countries where it's an actual problem. So what? How do you encourage them to use it?
We talk about it.
Well, I have 2 proposals for everyone. That's right. I've come up with some solutions. Number 1, the realistic and economic solution to your problems: making more clouds. The easiest way to stop solar radiation from ever being absorbed onto the planet is reflecting it back off into the space. And what does that better than anything other than clouds and snow? Shut up, Lawrence! Nobody's coding everything in mirrors. So, the best solution would be to create types of pseudo-pollutants. They don't necessarily impact the environment, other than by encouraging more cloud formation. And that, in turn, regardless of the amount of CO2 that we emit, can counteract, and is currently counteracting, much of the, yeah, what do you want?
Plants?
Plants?
Yeah.
What about
They
them?
have enough sunlight.
No, they're fine.
It's indirect. I mean, it's still there.
What about storms?
By putting in more clouds, we actually discourage giant storm formations, because it absorbs that, and you have more condensation spread amongst more clouds. You're less likely to have columns build up and create massive storm fronts.
Have you ever been to the UK?
Yeah.
You know how shitty it is there?
Yeah.
It's so cloudy.
Yeah.
So it'd be like that everywhere?
No. The best proposed idea is to do it in areas near the oceans so that it is cloudier there. Least impact on everyone and all plants. So that's the economic solution. Who wants to hear a crazy solution?
I do.
Oh, you? Okay. I only have 3 people.
Why is it on the coast? I didn't get that.
Oh, because that way you don't get the cloud cover over continents, and you can still have plants and stuff. And also, you said it looked shitty. Eh. So this is my crazy idea. This is the craziest, most expensive idea you could have. This is a map of the Lagrange points. Between us and the sun, there's a point of stability known as L1. If we were to put a series of massive disks, or just panels in general, into space between us and the sun, intermittently spaced so that you don't have like a big blotch or a big circle that just shows up in the center of the sun, you would reduce the amount of sunlight that we get. And all it would take is to put some stuff in between us and the sun, and you no longer have the problem of heating up the Earth too much. In fact, you could regulate the amount of heat you let through. It serves many purposes as well. I thought this out a little too much because the proposed price for my project is $3 trillion. It's insane. It's the U.S.'s spending budget for the military this year, Lawrence. So instead of having a war, let's put up solar panels in space to enter the age of abundance. What it would do is it would produce energy in space and send it back in non-ionizing microwave radiation pulses, sending it to Earth, allowing us to power our equipment for free for as long as we can sustain it. Not to mention, I would throw in a giant electromagnetic shield in this area in case we ever got hit by ionized solar radiation that could wipe out electronics on Earth, thus giving us advanced protection from the sun. Would you fight a country that said, fuck the military, I decided to build a giant space shield? Would you fight them? Would you want to go to war with them anymore? No. You'd want to go, all right, these guys are okay. They fixed global warming and they solved the energy crisis in one fell swoop.
All they have is a space shield.
I'm skeptical that it's going to work.
Now, of course you're skeptical. And my proposed date for this would be like 2060. But it would fix all the problems and it would be very, very expensive. But the thing is with the current price of solar panels pretty close to plummeting, it might be more viable than you'd think. The most expensive aspects of the project would be the emission arrays and the collection areas on Earth. Because when you have microwave radiation in space, you need to hone it in and send it back to Earth because it's kind of out there, it's magnified. And so in order to collect that, you would need systems to do so. Because otherwise you'd be wasting that energy as well. What's up?
How would it follow the Earth?
L1 never moves. As the Earth moves around this area, this entire triangle rotates with it. It is. It's locked. It's just like the moon is lunarly locked. L1, or Lagrange point 1, is locked between. It is the gravitational well of stability between the sun and the Earth.
How far is L1 from you?
Approximately 0.21 AU.
20 million miles?
I don't know what an AU is, but
It's 93 million to the sun.
Yeah.
So
93 million to the sun? Well, 21% of that. There you go.
How long would it take to get to L1?
We're there already. We have probes and stuff.
Okay.
That's no problem.
So it's not like
Huh?
1,000 years.
What?
So it's not like
No, it's actually
taking it back.
it's actually the same distance between that and the moon, so about 7 days. What's up? Well, with current technology, it could be faster.
Does the material exist which would resist the heat?
There isn't that much difference in the actual amount of heat that it is absorbing. It is barely noticeable. In fact, Venus is only as hot as it is now because of the atmosphere it has to retain the heat. Most of the radiation that the solar panels would absorb would be converted into energy, but the remainder could easily be reflected back at the sun. It would cause no issues. What's up?
Oh, yeah, so I was just going to ask where L1 is proportionately. You mentioned Venus, and I was going to say,
Venus is like there.
yeah, okay, so between us. Is there any kind of advantage to inching toward the sun in that, are you actually talking about creating a controlled shade, so to speak, like an actual...
Yes, but it also provides the Earth with energy.
Okay, so theoretically, if the materials existed, moving closer to the sun would create a greater possible solar return as well as...
You'd be risking the safety of the material itself.
Okay.
And yes, it would be better, but it wouldn't be stable.
Gravitationally stable.
It would not.
Okay, so what would the solution for Mars be if it wanted to create one? How would that become stable?
They all have Lagrange points.
Okay, so wouldn't we be better off hopping to Mars's orbit to create not only a closer array to the sun?
Mars is farther from the sun.
Venus, I'm sorry.
Venus.
Well, at that point, you'd be on Venus's Lagrange point, which moves along with Venus. And Venus and Earth don't sync up. Yeah, these points in space are moving in association with the well and the balance between gravity of Earth and the sun. So they're not actual objects or anything, they're just places in space. So, yes, what's up?
I know this is hypothetical. How big of an object are you planning on launching?
It would have the surface area of half the moon. But it's the surface area, it would unfold.
Would something that big throw anything off gravitationally?
It's not massive. It has it's just surface area.
It's like we put a big sheet of paper.
Correct.
It's not like we're taking a chunk of Earth and putting it there. Anyways, yes?
What if we
That
did?
create a problem, for example, if we want to get away from oil and coal, we want to use more renewable resources.
This creates energy.
You're creating a shadow over the Earth.
You won't see the shadow. No. No, it'll be spread out. It'll be lots of different stations in different locations so that you don't get a blotch on the Earth that will all be able to emit to centralized points on the planet to give us energy. Anyways, more questions?
Well, isn't like more practical to just invest?
I said this was the crazy idea.
Right, I know, but just in wrong research. I mean, for example, like companies themselves can't do this because you can only look ahead, say 5 years if you're a CEO. But like the space program gave a ton of technology throughout that everybody else was able to utilize. So I feel like it's the government has got to stir raw research into this to just make alternatives cheaper.
Yeah.
Because once it's cheaper, you don't have to count on people's
Well,
actions.
I would say that beyond solving the global warming issue, that this would give us an unbelievably influx amount of energy to use. We would enter an age of abundance, and whatever little concerns we had before that would seem minuscule in comparison, because we've killed 2 birds with 1 stone.
The key there is how do you take microwave radiation, turn that into energy?
We already do that.
How do you convert? What does it?
We've got line of sight microwave right now. We've got line of sight microwave right now. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
What's that create?
Energy. It's how you can broadcast energy on the electromagnetic spectrum in a way that it does not ionize. In such a way, you can collect that energy at a later point if you broadcast.
Or you can take what's already ionized and just
How do you turn that into electricity?
Because electricity is just electric. It's electric, and you just take it and make. Yeah, you know what I mean? There's a that's how motors work, man.
Wait, no, I don't get it.
No?
I was gonna send.
You're over our heads right now.
Huh?
You're over our heads right
Ah, crap. Electromagnetic frequencies can be converted into electricity. It has been done many a times. Tesla was the first one to originally think of the concept. It's been around for a while. It's already proven. It already exists. No new technology is needed from this except for the efficiency of the solar cells and the ability and finances to put this into space. This could be done in a couple
Are we
weeks.
getting bombarded with microwave radiation right now?
Not nearly. Not really, no. I mean, yeah, yes and no, not like it's in any amount that hurts us.
well, yeah, it doesn't hurt us because it goes right through us.
Yeah. In fact, your phone is using a very similar piece of technology that broadcasts low-range microwave radiation to communicate with the cell towers, and it doesn't hurt you at all.
No one said it hurts.
We generate electricity.
I mean, damaging, ionizing radiation. That's why I say ionizing, because it's non-damaging.
Do they generate electricity from that bombardment of radiation?
Actually, your phone, in some ways, could recharge using cell towers. They just don't let it happen. I don't know why. It hasn't been implemented on any large scale, but it can be done, and anyone could hack their phone to do it.
Can we get another presentation on that?
Oh, a presentation of how to charge your cell phone using...
On your...
Oh, on this?
Yeah, no.
Well, I've had this idea for a long time.
On sending electricity, 'cause I don't understand how you are just sending it from space back to Earth.
What's up?
Theoretically, it's like if you used like the 1.5 volts used to power your speaker to power the stereo. Like right now, we're in their infancy where we wouldn't be able to use that
Wow.
very signal
Yeah.
voltage to become the power voltage for the entire component. But that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
It's like line of sight microwave right now is used for transmission of data. But
Yes.
that same energy can be converted to become a power source if that research is done.
Also, you should... what is it? Wireless housing or something? Wireless transmission of electricity. If you just look up wireless transmission of electricity, your questions will be answered. I am not an expert in that field. It is just something I know exists, and am happy that we could utilize it. Okay. So I got a couple more questions. Thanks for listening to my absolute quackery there. I really like the idea, but it's so far-fetched and expensive that, whatever.
I've heard the concept of mirrors in space on documentaries. That's not.
Yeah, but does it power the planet? Anyways, so how should we get rid of our waste? There's a totally another question. We've got nuclear waste. We've got coal manufacturing waste that we have that shows up all the time. We even have just from chemical industries, we end up with lakes of crap that we don't really know what to do with. So what should we do with it? Launch it in space. That's not economically viable right now, but great idea. I approve of space elevators.
Biological fixation.
What's that?
Like, I don't know, organisms that can break things down. You can do that with.
That's great. Yeah.
Biphenols.
What are plastic bottles usually made of, guys? BPA? Is that the name of the plastic? That's right. But the type of plastic, is it a BPA? Did you look on your bottle? Okay. Interesting fact. Scientists have found, at least in Asia, that a bacterium exists that can eat that plastic. And that's new. That didn't exist. It evolved just for this instance to eat that. Or at least because it had to. There was nothing else to eat. There's a big problem in the middle of the ocean. I think somebody brought this up earlier, where we've got lots of particles of plastic interfering with the ecosystems there. Well, that's one of the things. It's worse than that because the microbeads that people...
League of Legends players.
Stop making league jokes. Okay. Yes, so we could break down the Great Pacific Patch with some bacterium like that. But obviously there's toxic waste that still needs to be broken down, and radioactive waste, which is even harder. I believe a species of fungus has helped accelerate certain types of radioactivity. We found and discovered in Chernobyl, the Chernobyl region, that a type of fungus does in fact thrive and use the radioactivity from the isotopes of the fallout. But that's the thing, that's the isotopes of the fallout, that's not the radioactive waste that we put in containers and seal away for decades and decades and assume no one will ever look at. I mean, they did a lot of research on it. I thought it was really cool what they did. They made it so that the area seemed eerie, because if you don't have any signs anymore, you might want to just go away. They have it so that wind blows through certain things and makes howling noises, so that, and this is one of the, I think either Nevada or somewhere down there, where they keep a bunch of nuclear waste. And they just tried to make it as ominous as possible, and all the warning signs in every language and in any form of nonverbal communication that we could acknowledge, so that in the future, if something went shitty and civilization collapsed, that the next civilization would not open that door. Because they still couldn't. They really can't. They'll die. All right, so it's worth recycling. Only aluminum. Thank you. Moving on. All right, no, it's true. That one is a fact. The only thing that's worth actually recycling in terms of how much energy consumption you would need to just make new stuff is aluminum. Because aluminum from aluminum ore requires extreme temperatures to make and create new aluminum, while recycling aluminum is much easier. Plastics, wood, other things.
It takes way more energy and worse for the environment.
Yes, yes. The thing is
well, there's a special case though, like with paper, they can just grind it up and throw it in your attic or in your walls as insulation.
now that is a different form, and recycling in particular that I was referring to is the reuse of the material for its intended
To
purpose.
actually make a product out of it.
That is different,
Right.
and in that instance, it's fine. Like if you were to say, do what he did with old newspapers, shred them up and throw them in your walls, that's reuse, not necessarily recycling.
Wisconsin actually created an energy commission that can air seal your house that way. They can take the cellulose and dense pack it in the walls.
Sure.
And make an air seal without having to.
Yeah, you can build benches and stuff out of plastic bottles and wood chips.
Right.
That's fine.
As a material, yeah.
And those are economically viable. But for everything else, you're actually creating more CO2 when you try to reuse it, like glass or what's up? You just stretching there?
No, I was gonna say, does that mean like it's not worth it to say like put something in recyclables versus garbage, because then it's at least like they have it in one place.
Landfills are surprisingly useful. They produce fuel. People like fuel. That's what this whole thing's about. I'm just fucking with you. All right.
Because at least then, like say the plastic is like separate from the garbage, and they can put
Sure.
it in a place other than.
Well, I have a whole list of reasons why landfills are relatively useful, including the fact that if you let them decay, they produce natural gases, and we can reuse those natural gases more than we could reuse the material they're made of to begin with. Also, they leave a historical record of our civilization currently. And assuming we all just kick the bucket here in the United States and somebody comes back thousands of years later, how will they know what we did?
So that's your diary.
Our diary, and the diary of many extinct civilizations, is their waste piles. Definitely. So, last one. What are some other ways we can help clean up the planet? We're done talking about global warming and carbon dioxide. I've covered radiation a little bit. We've talked about plastic a bit, but there's so much more. There's stuff I don't even know about that we're polluting, and that's saying something. No, it's not. Actually, it is saying something, just not important. Any other ideas, folks? I think we've discussed quite a bit here. Jason, you said nothing. All right. Well, if that's the case, that's the end of my presentation. Feel free and converse amongst yourself. Thanks again for attending. It was quite successful.
Before we break up,